to 5 a.m. podcast. Your morning motivation starts here.
Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast. I'm your host, Michael Clausen. The early morning is when the world is the quietest, but I believe it's also the time of day when the most profound growth can happen. Today, we are diving deep into a journey of transformation with a guest who bridges the gap between ancient wisdom and modern leadership. Joining us today is Rabbi Damian Eisner. Damian is a frequent contributor to Messiah magazine and the author of the compelling new book, The Heart of Moses, Moses' Leadership Wisdom. Now, as we know, in a world that we live in, it's obsessed with talent and overnight success and the Instagram-ready faces. But Damian challenges us to look at leadership through a different lens, the lens of character. We're going to talk about why great leaders aren't born, but they're formed, and then how to sustain purpose when that passion fades, and what it truly means to develop the heart of Moses. So grab your coffee, settle in, and share this episode with a friend, and we'll start this day with intention and vigor. Damian Eisner, welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Oh, yes, me too. And it's a delight to have you here. Now, you mentioned that Moses began his journey arguing with God at the burning bush. How does this understanding, or how does understanding Moses's initial maybe lack of confidence change the way we should view our own qualifications for leadership?
Well, I think it should be very freeing. It should be very liberating to us because I think there's a very common myth surrounding leadership, that the myth of the confident leader, we should say. You know, I think we probably all from a young age have been around that person who just seemed to have it. You know, they were always at the head of the class doing this, or the team captain. And so there's this myth that that's what makes great leaders. But the truth of the matter is there are so many times, and I work with a number of leaders around the world who we're all very familiar with the imposter syndrome these days. I think it's gained a lot of attention because it's incredibly true. It's a very resonates deeply with so many people, but so many leaders that I encounter, including myself, start this journey with the questions that Moses asked. Who in the world am I, God, that you're calling me to this like monumental task? I can't do this. Even when it's small things, we tend to discredit ourselves. Now, of course, I know, and I've seen some of your other podcast guests who are like, I cannot be stopped. You know, I just knew I would never fail. I pressed on no matter what came. And I love that attitude. And that is very much a thing that leaders develop over time, but we're not all built like that. And Moses, of all people, like, he was pretty bold, you know, in his arguing with God. He gave him a number of excuses why he was not going to be able to do this. I have always been actually encouraged by that. He eventually made God kind of angry, and God said, "You're doing it, you know, you're doing it. Shut up, go do it." It would be nice if it worked like that all the time. But I think, you know, inferiority, there's a healthy kind of inferiority that says, gosh, I really should approach this humbly because it's a very big task. And stepping into it even when you feel unready. I'm much more worried about the leader who comes to me and like they don't have any questions about themselves at all.
Yeah.
They're just, I'm going to do this, you know, I'm doing it. There's nothing that can stop me. Well, you learn pretty quickly in leadership that there are a number of things that can stop you, that can derail you.
Yes. Yeah. So then, speaking of humility and character, as we know, Moses led for 40 years through incredible resistance, his battles internally and externally with people and with his own flesh. In your book, you talk about that personal characteristic of leadership. Can you share with us then, further to your point about that confluence of humility, ego, and confidence needed to possess a leadership role, or maybe a leadership mindset?
Well, there are so many aspects. There's a chapter in the book where I kind of go through, leadership styles. We've all read John Maxwell and the other guys who have
Yep.
these defining categories. You have authoritative leadership, you have positional leadership, you have transformational leadership, which is a big part of the 5 a.m. podcast, right? But above all things, I think that humility is certainly what Moses demonstrated that allowed him to
Hmm.
manage 40 years. Interesting, there's a text in the Bible that says Moses was the most humble of all people, which I've
Hmm.
always gotten a kick out of because in Judaism we recognize that
Yeah.
Moses, he's getting the Torah, and yet the Torah itself says Moses is the most humble man. So,
Hmm.
but there's an ability that comes with the humble leader, I think,
Hmm.
to be able to see people and to see people as souls. And Moses was challenged so often, and that's only what's recorded in the Torah. We're talking about millions of people. He's transforming their mindset from what they were in
Yeah.
Egypt to what they would become. But so often they wanted to, not so often, but enough, they wanted to go back.
Right.
You know, what happened to we miss the leeks and onions in Egypt. Why did you bring us here to die?
Mm.
How easy for a leader to say, you know what? I'm done with you. I'm done with you. But seeing beyond, seeing behind the eyes, seeing behind the actions, this is humility in one sense, not taking it personal. This is another aspect of humility. But these trials, they are the things that can form us into the people who have that, leaders who have that thick skin to let the complaints and the whiners, that stuff can bounce off of you when the whole inside is filled with humility, the outside becomes tough to resist these kind of attacks, if we can use
Right.
that word.
Yeah, that's good. So, how many Israelites would Moses have been leading from, let's say, that first Passover through the Red Sea and at that time?
Yeah, well, a lot in the millions,
Okay.
because we're talking about the Torah references the men that are coming
Hmm.
out, that
Yeah.
we have families, we have a
Yes.
lot of families that are coming out. Plus, there's a mixed multitude, the Torah tells us. So it's not
Okay.
it's not just Israel. It's also known that there were certain Egyptians that came out that recognized the
Hmm.
God of Israel. How could you not,
Yeah.
after you would think, but a lot of Egyptians did die in Egypt, but there was a
Right.
mixed multitude. So it was a lot of people,
Wow.
especially for one guy.
Yes. And so the other component of that, as we know, leaders have bosses oftentimes, or
Yeah.
stakeholders or shareholders,
Yeah.
and a board of directors, that kind of thing. And Moses had the Lord as his board of directors and stakeholder.
Yeah.
There was the time where Moses was exasperated, the people were exasperated. You talked about, man, can't we go back to the cucumbers and leeks and onions? I know we were slaves, but the food was good
Right.
on certain days. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there was that point where God said, "Hey, maybe I can just kill the whole bunch and I'll just restart with you, Moses." Can you talk about how learning the skill of staying on task and accomplishing it even when the stakeholders are ready to pull up stakes?
Yeah, this is, and we should come back to talking about that moment where God
Okay.
said, forget them, I'll take you, Moses. That's
Yeah.
in terms of extreme ownership, that's a real one that we should hit. But I think to your question, we're talking about purpose and passion, and they are definitely not the same thing.
Okay.
Passion is important. It's important for leaders. We could say that vision sometimes is driven by passion. We have a thing as leaders in our minds. We know that we've been tasked with this. It's our thing to do. We're building the team. We're driving. We're gonna see this thing through. We're so passionate for it. But there's a big difference between driven by passion and driven by purpose. Because when you are building a team, or when you're driving anything, Moses very quickly found out that can't be done. You can't do that by yourself. You've got to have your people with you. And instilling in those people purpose for the mission is much more important than passion, because passion is fleeting. Moses had a lot of passion. We saw that.
Yeah.
We saw it at, he killed an Egyptian out of passion. He had many
Yes.
moments of passion. One in particular, which got him in trouble, which we can talk about
Yes.
striking
Yeah.
rocks later. But I mentioned it just a minute ago. The idea of saying to Egypt, to Israel and Egypt, hey guys, we're gonna come out of here. God's gonna set you free. You're not gonna be slaves anymore. Okay.
Hmm.
I would be extremely passionate about that if I were an an Israelite slave.
Yeah. Right.
That was the beginning of the thing.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
not, we got out of Egypt and here we are, we've crossed the Red Sea. That was miraculous and cool. Okay, we've arrived. Not
Yeah.
at all. The arrival was 50 days later at Mount Sinai, when God said, you're gonna be my people, and here's this covenant, this Torah and my laws and all these things. Moses had to constantly be reinforcing the transformation of the people, not just from you're not slaves anymore, you're free people. No, all the way into you're God's people. He's chosen you, he's brought you out. And all this difficult journey that we're on right now, this is bringing us into the land that God promised to your forefathers, that's been chosen for you. And so all of the setbacks, all of the difficulties, all of the problems that they faced, Moses, as the leader, saw the greater purpose and was constantly trying to instill that in the people. They didn't get it all the time. It's hard. A leader must constantly be reinforcing that deeper and bigger purpose rather than passion.
Yes. So now in the book, which, ladies and gentlemen, I have right here,
Sure.
it's been a very good book. So in this book, The Heart of Moses, you talk, and you'll have to correct my Hebrew because I never took that in college or preschool or anything, but you
No
talk
problem.
about Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers. So
Right.
in that absence of leaders, try to be one. Can you share maybe examples of where or how Moses started to take hold of being a leader?
Yeah. I'll give you, just in case this ever comes up on Jeopardy, and they're
Okay.
asking you for the book of the Mishnah that's called the Ethics of the Fathers. It's
Okay.
Pirkei Avot. Avot
Okay.
means father. Okay, fathers. So I think, first of all, we talked about this in the first question. Moses running from leadership, running
Yeah.
from responsibility, is the great start of his story, in the sense of being relatable for us. He made this grave mistake in Egypt. He runs from this position that he had in Egypt out of fear. He hides away in the wilderness as the shepherd, spending his days with goats and sheep,
Yes.
and then has this incredible moment where the bush is not consumed and God is calling out, and Moses answers with this really important phrase in Hebrew, hineni. Hineni, which means here I am. When you read and hear hineni in the Bible, that's God issuing you a very important call for a task. Abraham had a Hineni moment, Isaiah a Hineni moment, Moses a Hineni moment. The problem is God doesn't tell you what's coming next. He just says, Moses, Hineni, here I am, okay? And the next thing at the bush is the call. It's the call. I've seen the afflictions of my people, Moses, I chose you. Okay. No, I don't want the job. I don't want the job. And that is the moment where we're talking about transformation here. It was through that moment, of course, where the first big, where there are no leaders, be a leader, He did it. Now, God didn't give him much choice, but he did it. We then watch him move through confronting Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world, issuing
Mhm.
these challenges to Pharaoh. That took incredible, another nice Hebrew word for you, chutzpah. Chutzpah. It took incredible nerve to do that. Further, boldness in leadership, it's required. And then there's an interesting moment at the sea. As Egypt is bearing down from behind, Pharaoh's changed his mind. We let them go. Now I want them, we're going to go kill them all. And so they have the sea. Israel has the sea in front of them. They've got Pharaoh's army and the chariots behind. And Moses has my favorite Moses moment where they're hemmed in, and Moses at this point gives the speech of speeches to Israel. Move forward. God is with us. Egypt will never rule over us again. Okay. And in the very next verse in Exodus, God asks him, Moses, why are you crying out to me? So the contrast is, publicly he's giving this bold, brave, go for it, Israel. But behind the scenes, you can almost imagine Moses going behind a big rock and saying, God, what am I going to do? There's a sea in front of us. What am I supposed to do? And God says, Moses, come on, dude. I've put you in the position. Rise to the occasion. Plant your staff and go. And that moment for me, I think so many of us have had those moments where we've taken the step of leadership and the road all of a sudden seems blocked by an immense sea. And we begin to second guess ourselves. And we have to ask, did God call me to this or not? Because if he did, the way is forward. Got to plant the staff. The way is forward. And who else was going to do it? Who else? There's an interesting story in Jewish literature about the fact that there was one very, very brave soul by the name of Nachshon, who was the first one, though, to step into the sea. The sea had not yet parted. He steps in, nothing happens. He walks a little further, nothing happens. He's walking in further. He's up to his chest. Nothing has happened. He's almost up to his nose. The sea parts. So Nachshon, also not Moses, but Nachshon, demonstrates very much the Pirkei Avot statement of saying, where there are no leaders, take action, brother. Step out there. And so Nachshon, he did it. I have in my synagogue, I gave a message about Nachshon one year, and we coined the phrase Nachshon it. We're going to Nachshon it. It's better than just do it. It's Nachshon it. We're going to take the step regardless, and we're going to let God do God here.
Like I'll go in up and I'll even commit to just about drowning and not being able to breathe. And I know that God is going to come through for me. And of course, the other river crossing that the next generation of Israelites had was to cross the Jordan River. I don't know if we'll get to that today, but that's another theme of stepping into the water, because for them, those priests, the waters didn't part until they got their feet wet in it. But I do want to ask you about Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, because the reader of the English Bible anyway does not learn about Jethro until he comes to give advice to his son-in-law.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about if there's any folklore or other historical bits of who Jethro was and how important it was at that time for Moses to actually have a mentor in the flesh?
Yeah. Well, Jethro was a Midianite priest. Obviously, you mentioned he's Moses' father-in-law, so he's Zipporah's dad. He is not a stranger to Moses, obviously, because he had gone off to tend the sheep there of his father-in-law. Okay. So Moses understand that, and Jethro is highly regarded
Okay.
because there are a number of reasons. It's a whole nother podcast, but
Okay, that's good.
interestingly, I'll just give you a little bit of Torah trivia here.
Sure.
The 5 books of Moses, the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, first 5 books of the Bible, called the Torah. It means instruction. It's divided into portions that are read each week. Okay. The Torah
Okay.
portion is read each week. The names of each portion has a name that's drawn from the text in that portion. One of the most important Torah portions in the entire Bible is the giving of the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20.
Hmm.
And that Torah portion's name is actually Yitro, which means Jethro in Hebrew. So this non-Israelite father-in-law Moses is honored in this way with being the connection point for this Torah portion with the giving of the 10 Commandments. That's just a small representation of how he's regarded. But the really important thing about Jethro, and speaking of humility, is Moses' picture, son-in-law, shepherd, living on daddy-in-law's, property here.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden Moses has heard the call at the bush. He's been back to Egypt. He's confronted Pharaoh. God, through Moses and Aaron, has defeated Pharaoh. God has parted a body of water at Moses' staff declaration. And he's leading these millions of people. And then he's judging, right? He's judging the people. Moses is sitting down. He's litigating. Maybe that's not the right word, but they're bringing all their problems to him. They're saying, Moses, we got this problem. How are we going to settle this? How are we going to settle this? We're going to settle this. And Moses is exhausted. How many leaders can relate to everyone bringing you their problems and expecting you to solve them, right? And so what happens? We know that Jethro comes along to his son-in-law, who is now pretty powerful. And he says, son, what you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is not good. This is literally going to kill you. You have got to find a way to do a better job. You've got to delegate. You've got to set up you got to learn to delegate. Now, it's true. And we could write an entire book about the power of delegation and learning from Jethro and Moses in this. There is a chapter, but it's really centered on humility, because what can you I think my father-in-law has passed away. May his memory be a blessing. But, for him to come and tell me, you're doing this all wrong, I want you to do, and I'm like, hey, look at me. And Moses saying to Jethro, do you know who you're talking to, man? I'm not that little shepherd underling that was guarding your sheep. And it's Moses simply does. His humility is so great that he just recognizes, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Thank you. And so it speaks to Jethro and Jethro's incredible wisdom. It speaks to Moses and his incredible humility, which is the theme so far of our show, is that leadership cannot survive in the absence of humility. And sometimes that comes in big doses, swallow your pride, big swallow doses of humility. And that's one of them.
Wow. And now there's 2 other pivotal men in Moses's life. Number 1, Aaron, his older brother, who was his spokesman. The other one is Hur. Can you not necessarily set the stage for the listener of these 2 men, but this speaks to building a team or having a team around you, much like what Jethro told him. Listen, you need some other judges who can sit in your place of authority. And I think was it under Jethro that the 70 leaders came?
Yeah. Well, yes, and we get later the model of the Jewish court of law, the Sanhedrin, which people are familiar with. This came from the delegation of authority. So that's how far back this goes. Aaron obviously was one of a sibling for sure, but and Moses' close partner. He was also one of God's bargaining chips at the burning bush, because that, Moses
Hmm.
Moses' critique is, I'm slow of speech. How am I supposed to do this? And God has an answer pretty quick. I'll give you Aaron.
Yes.
Don't worry about it. Hur, Hur, Miriam's husband. Some tradition, we have Miriam's husband, Hur,
Okay.
and the importance of building a team, for sure. More importantly, I would even say the importance for a leader to recognize your own weakness
Wow.
and to recognize, again, you simply cannot do this yourself. And that's the the holding up the arms moment when we have
Hmm.
Aaron and Hur on either side of Moses. And beyond the obvious lesson there of that you can't do it yourself, it's the power, the necessity of a leader to have a right and left hand man or woman,
Mm.
to have not just a team that you can delegate to, but a team, one or two close people, colleagues or mentors, people on your level or above, that you can absolutely lay it on them and they can handle it. And they can support you, they can talk tough to you,
Hmm.
they can help you navigate things. It's not really delegation, it's support. It's a leadership lifeline that you've got to have.
Right. Yeah, so then we could say, based on this example of Moses, in matters of life and death, have an Aaron and a Hur with you.
Absolutely.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
now you mentioned Miriam, and I didn't have her in my questions, but she wrote the song after they crossed through the sea, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So, being his sister, of course, there's other information of that relationship. Sometimes in our leadership roles, it seems like family can get in the way. So, and I'll just go to Samson for a second because I love the story of the little foxes that broke in. No,
Mhm.
I don't want to say that Miriam was a little fox who broke in and ate the wheat, but can you talk a little bit about those other people in the leader's orbit that maybe they're designed to grind with them, but yet they have something there, maybe an unopened gift? Not that Miriam was an unopened gift, but she brought something to this story that I think is important to touch on.
Yeah, um, well, I think to your original or to the early part of that question,
Hmm.
family and difficulty. I mean, family in stepping into leadership and communicating, I've got a vision, you as the leader communicating, I've got a vision to do this. This is what I want to accomplish. I'm setting out to become this. And
Hmm.
you set out on the role and you're climbing, you're clawing, you're building your business, you're building whatever. Sometimes that family critique can be really, really hard to take,
Hmm.
Sometimes those closest to you, their criticisms can be some of the most difficult to handle. And because there's usually not a filter either.
Yeah.
Your colleagues or your subordinates, they'll filter criticism. Sometimes your family's like, there it is, and it's hard to take. But you remember an occurrence in the Torah where Aaron and Miriam, Moses'
Mhm.
siblings, are criticizing him. And, it's certainly not the first criticism Moses got, but when it comes from close, it hurts worse. And Miriam actually, she bears the brunt of that because God actually gives her this visible sign, right?
Mhm.
It's called sarat in Hebrew. It's biblical leprosy. It doesn't have anything to do with Hansen's disease. Jewish tradition says that people acquire sarat, the condition of sarat, because of evil speech,
Wow.
because they're using their words to do harm rather than to build.
Hmm.
So Miriam was a tough sister. She wasn't afraid to bring some criticism. But again, let's note Moses' reaction, which was simple humility, simply praying, asking for God to restore her. And, that even in the closest, most intimate relationships where he is being criticized, it's still a reflection of Moses' incredible humility.
Mm.
And that we're not going to get away from this theme in the podcast, Michael, of
Yes.
Moses as the humble leader leading people toward transformation. Miriam was also quite a gifted young lady. Obviously, she was a prophetess. She wrote Miriam's song, and there is quite a bit of information, great things in Jewish literature about Miriam. I'll just allow the listeners
Yeah,
to do
absolutely.
some Google research on how esteemed Miriam is
Mm.
in Judaism.
Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. Wow, that's powerful. So, one other man that I absolutely want to talk to you about, certainly someone who is pivotal in my life and reading of the scriptures. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're chatting with Rabbi Damian Eisner about his book, The Heart of Moses. And before I finish this question, I want to remind you that we have a comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, we love hearing from you. We love seeing those comments. And one of your comments might be, Michael, how can I get in touch with Damian? So, Damian, can you share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. Damian, Damian at FFOZ, Damian at FFOZ.org. That's First Fruits of Zion. That's actually the international teaching organization, Messianic Jewish teaching organization. I wrote this book, The Heart of Moses, through and for, initially for our Torah Club leaders at First Fruits of Zion. We have a very large international Bible study, and I am the director for Torah Club. We're currently studying the end of days. Quite a light topic in this day and age, right? We're studying the book of Revelation, apocalyptic literature. So yeah, long answer, but Damian at FFOZ.
Oh, that's good. And so if people want their own copy of The Heart of Moses, or they want to find out more about First Fruits of Zion, where can they go online for that?
You can go to ffoz.org and find all kinds of information about biblical interpretation and understanding the Jewish roots of the Bible, of Jesus, of the apostles, of, so many enlightening things to learn when we understand the Bible from a Jewish perspective, because it was a Jewish book. It is a Jewish book. It was actually written by Jews. So there's some really amazing things to learn when you're seeing the Bible in that perspective. The book is there at ffoz.org/store. It's also on Amazon.
That's good. Okay, so getting back to Joshua, who was, I would say, mentored by Moses, certainly seemed to me, he meant a lot to me as a child and young adult of reading the scriptures, finding out about Joseph. The moment that really sticks out in my mind about Joseph is when the temple was erected, the presence of the Lord would come down, and the ceremonies would take place, and there would be men who would linger at the entrance to the temple in the presence of God, or where the presence of God had been. And Joshua comes and says to Moses, look at these guys. They're like, I don't know, are they being lazy? Are they dilly-dallying? Or you would have more insight to me on what those men were doing at the entrance to the temple. But then Moses says to Joshua, I would that everyone in Israel tarry and linger in the presence of the Lord. And then we read that Joshua went and joined those men. I often wonder or speculate in my mind that's where he met Caleb. Can you talk about maybe that instance, but also mentoring the next generation of leadership based on Moses and Joshua?
Yeah, Joshua is also one of my favorites for so many reasons. The book of Joshua has my favorite be strong and courageous text. But Joshua, well, how many different things can I say here? Let me first answer your question. What I love about that moment is Joshua is looking out for Moses in some sense. He's the leader, but Moses is demonstrating another incredible leadership principle here, is that no, if only I could inspire everyone all of these people to be like that, to be filled with passion and purpose. If only that could be the case. Joshua, don't ever pray against that. It's not about me. It's about the legacy that we leave. And we need more and more leaders like this. Joshua was Moses' right-hand man. He was with him. He looked out for Moses all the time. And Moses loved Joshua. That's quite obvious. Because in terms of mentors, mentoring younger leaders, again, I think broken record moment here, Michael.
No
The
problem.
humility of Moses.
Yes.
The humility of Moses when he has a leadership breakdown at Meribah, striking the rock twice. You're not going in, Moses, God says. It's like one of the hardest moments in all of Scripture. All these things we've talked about in this podcast so far that Moses did, all of this incredible humility, all these things, and he has this one moment, and it results in him not seeing the promised land. And what is the human tendency? Is to withdraw, is to quit, is to say, fine, I quit, God, forget it. You can have it. Let somebody else lead it. But Moses does not do that. He continues to empower Joshua. He continues to be a mentor to Joshua. He demonstrates leadership to Joshua that even when horrendous things happen to us as leaders, we must still carry the torch of passing on the legacy to those who will come behind us. And they're both incredible leaders in their own right. But Moses demonstrates something really special there, to fight against our evil inclination to make it all about me. And if I've done all this work, if I'm not getting what I want out of this, forget it. I quit.
Wow.
He never quit.
Yeah. What a leader, what an attitude of good leadership, of taking the punishment for the error of our ways. Would you say, though, that there's a theme of wherever there's a punishment, there might be a corresponding reward or supplemental reward?
Yes, definitely. Punishment, I would say, where there is when an adversity is faced, it's, again, human tendency. We hit the wall and we turn around and walk away from the wall because it's just too hard and that hurt. I wasn't ready for that, and okay, well, I guess I'm not cut out for this. No, you climb the wall. You got to figure out how to either get through it, over it, or around it. That's what leadership requires. Followers can hit the wall and turn around, but not leaders. And so the lesson I learned, or the phrase that I love, and I can't even remember where I heard it, was we talk in terms of win or lose terms. Win or lose. It's win or learn. Win or learn. And the leader with both passion, with purpose, with humility, with dedication, with an intention to transform those who they're leading, will take an adversity, a punishment, a difficulty, and will say, what can I learn from it? What do I need to do? What does this teach me about me? Why did this happen? How do I need to not repeat this again? I have to accept. It's like Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership book. It's on me. It's on me, even when it's not really on you. If it's your leading and your people, then this takes us back to what we were talking about earlier with that moment at the golden calf. We've come from slavery to freedom, been to Mount Sinai. God has appeared in thunder and the blasts of the shofar, and it's this incredible, incredible moment. Moses is up there, and the people realize, Moses has been gone too long. I don't know if he's coming back, so let's have this calf. And it's not that simple. Again, we could have a whole nother podcast about what was actually going on with the golden calf, but nevertheless, they built it. Moses comes down with who? Joshua's there, and breaks the tablets, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's a miserable failure. It's over. It's over. Moses, leadership. steps in. I will go. You have sinned so badly, but I will go up and see if I can plead for forgiveness. And that's that fateful moment when God says, Moses, they're irreparable. Okay, these people. There's
Mhm.
nothing I can do with them. And I'm going to start over with you. Okay? That's a pretty good offer if you're the leader.
Yeah.
Moses, God's going to take you, especially you again, and he's going to start over. Wow. I know a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there are many people who would take that offer.
Yeah.
Moses did not take that offer. And instead he stepped in to intercession and he said, God, it's us, me and them, or nobody. Blot me
Mm.
out of your book.
Wow.
If you're not going with, and if we're not going together, blot
Yeah.
me out of the book. Man, that's extreme ownership. That's what leadership looks like.
Yes. So it's almost like that offer from God was a test to see how Moses would respond.
It's that has been suggested,
Yeah,
certainly.
good. Okay, so I have another question then about this calf that magically appeared after
Yeah,
the gold was thrown into the fire. I don't know how it
yeah,
happened. Do
right.
you think that there were those maybe in the mixed multitude or some people who came and exacerbated the situation to compel the people to resist leadership and go in a different direction?
Most definitely. The mixed multitude gets a bad rap in Jewish literature.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
gonna be honest with you about that. That like when we read Israel was saying, "Let's go back to Egypt where the cucumbers, leeks,
Mhm.
melons, and onions were." One of the at least opinion, an
Okay.
opinion, was that that was coming from the Egyptians
Ah,
who went out and they were talking in
okay.
the corners and the shadows and they built
Mm.
up this whole idea, this resistance. I think probably, the and now you know what? I got totally distracted. I forgot the question.
Oh, it was just about that Moses comes down, he sees the golden calf. The people may have been led astray. There might have been some usurpers to the throne, some exacerbators
Yeah.
that came along. And does tradition or history show us that there were people who were trying to stir up the crowd at this moment and led them into temptation, but also were maybe looking for a way to take control of this multitude?
I don't know at that moment if that is the case. There was a real sense of uncertainty at this moment among the multitude of people because the sense was not we want to worship another god. It was simply our connection to God has disappeared.
Hmm.
Because they assumed that Moses was not coming back. Moses had been their intercessor.
Yeah.
He was the one. You remember at the giving of the 10 commandments, they said, you talk to God. Moses was the intercessor. And so he was gone and there was this sense of, okay, what do we do now? It was definitely an idolatrous thing, but there's more to it. However, to your question, maybe
Mhm.
there or maybe not, but we do know that there were people, mainly the names
Yeah.
Korach and Datan and Abiram, we read later, who created the rebellion against Moses and Aaron. And, this is a mutiny, we can say,
Mm. Mhm.
which was the challenge to Moses and Aaron's leadership. And this is a real thing. It's not just
Yeah.
ancient
Right.
Israel culture. It's now. You're a leader. You're working. You've built a wonderful organization, but yet somehow there's the grumblers and the mumblers that can be somewhere down there and rumor mill going, or they start questioning the leadership, or what's the direction of this company? What are they doing? And that's really what Korach was trying to
Mm.
do. He was trying to say, we're all, you know, we're all as qualified as you, Moses. Who makes you special that you should be able to be leader over us? We
Yeah.
can do it. And what do we witness? Big
Yes.
surprise.
Big surprise.
Moses' humility arises again. He hits the deck. He says, God, oh, what are we going to do about this? What are you going to do? He does not do the human instinct thing, which is to say, you got to be kidding me, Korach. You've seen everything that I've done. You know who I am.
Mhm.
Don't question my leadership, blah, blah, blah. None of that. It's simply, God, you got to help me sort this out.
Mhm.
You gotta help me. And certainly getting
Yeah,
swallowed up by the earth is
that's
something
right.
only God can do, but, he certainly heard Moses and Aaron's prayer.
Mm. Yeah, and the, creation arose to the occasion to participate
Yeah,
in that circumstance and to show who indeed was on the Lord's side.
right.
Now, I wanted to talk about leadership at home and legacy thinking. So, let's talk about Moses and his wife and just the lessons that the husband and the wife can learn about position within the home. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of Moses's experience?
Well, honestly, there's not a lot we don't have a lot in the Torah about Moses and Zipporah.
Okay.
We have their journey. We have this very, and, I've been studying for many decades, and still the journey from Midian to Egypt with the sons and the circumcision and all that, it's still very
Yeah.
kind of cloudy thing, but we don't have much to talk about there in terms
Okay.
of Moses' interaction because so much of it is what he's doing for the people. But I can speak generally
Yeah.
about the idea of leadership and family. Certainly, I think in ministry, and I know for many leaders, business leaders, whatever, there's a tendency for the work is everything, right? The
Mhm.
work is everything. No, look, you don't understand. I'm building this, and all of these people's lives are affected, and we're empowered by passion and purpose. And this is this, and I've got to do this. I've got to be here. I've got to go out of town to do this. I've got to do this conference, all of
Mm.
that, because we're so deeply connected to the work.
Yeah.
And it matters to us. And what is the inevitability sometimes that occurs is that the people that matter most in life
Mhm.
become backseat. And I've had this conversation with my wife, and it's not even that long ago, if I'm, being very transparent here, of just prioritizing. Absolutely prioritizing, understanding God put you in a position to be a legacy builder in whatever your organization is or whatever it is that you're building.
Yeah.
But your greatest legacy is your family. That
Yeah.
is where your input matters above all things. And that balance is sometimes very hard to maintain. I get it. But it
Mhm.
is, when it comes to God, that order of operations, we have God, family, and then we have everything else.
Yes, yes. Would you say that there is a correlation then to when Jesus commanded the disciples to go to the house of Israel first and then to the nations?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I can make that connection on the
Okay.
fly anyway. If you gave me
Oh,
time to
that's
think
good.
about it, maybe
Sorry,
I could.
that was a total audible. I totally that's
No, I'm
that
just thinking about it. That there was a lot going on in that exchange though,
mm,
because Jesus makes it very, very clear to the disciples, but then in the Great Commission, and it's sprinkled throughout the Gospels too, that those from the east and the west will dine at the table of Abraham.
yeah.
There's and the Syrophoenician woman, and
Mhm.
then in Acts with Cornelius and the centurion and all this stuff, there are hints. But then in the Great Commission, we see it's going out to everybody. So because we've articulated it out loud, yes, we figured it out.
That's good.
Brothers, go to your family first, serve your family first, and then legacy thinking out there, build the big thing.
Yes.
How was
So
that on the
no,
fly?
that was good. I loved it. I loved it. We totally scored a TD on that audible call, which has to be done from time to time. So this legacy thinking of shifting our daily decision making from seeking immediate results to being able to plant seeds for the next generation. I think I see it with Moses and Joshua Can you talk a little bit about that importance of that mentorship?
Definitely. And more than ever, Michael, in this day and age where we've got, I know there's a tendency too often to criticize the generations behind us. I am in no way suggesting that that's the case, because these are our future leaders,
Hmm.
but we've got to train them up. We've got to, it's very hard, I think. And I don't want this to sound like I'm saying in any way that they're weak. All I'm saying is it's harder to be young today than it was when I was young. I'm not young anymore.
Yeah.
But grew up in the 80s. We rode BMX bikes and watched, I don't know, it was played Atari. It's
Yeah.
such a more difficult world, I think, to live in right now. Not I
Yeah.
think, I know, with social media, with everything that's out there. So the reality of finding someone, it doesn't matter what you lead. You may not be leading anything in terms of a ministry, an organization, a business, whatever. But if you're hearing this, you got to find a young person to lead. You got to
Yeah.
find someone to mentor. You've got to be available to them for questions, to give them guidance, to do these kinds of things. That's important. That's legacy thinking. The idea of immediate gratification, also a byproduct of this generation, what we call microwave rewards, I want it right now. That happens to leaders all the time, is that, no, we need immediate results. We've got to be judged. I want the fruit of my labors to come soon. And I want to be recognized and rewarded for all the things I'm doing right now. And so often that's just not the way it is. Legacy leadership is seed planting. It is doing the Moses Joshua thing, and many other examples throughout the Bible, but where you may never get to see in this life the results of what you actually built as a leader.
Yeah. That's like a man plants a fruit tree for the next 4 generations,
Yeah.
and being able to plant those seeds. So, Damian, thank you so much for sharing these insights, talking to us about who Moses was, his heart and his humility. Such a powerful reminder that while the world looks at the outward appearance and the immediate results, like we just talked about, those microwave rewards, the
Right.
foundation that actually sustains is a legacy of the heart. So, thank you so much for joining me today for the 5 a.m. podcast.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
What a blessing. And ladies and gentlemen, there is like so much more that Damian and I could talk about. I got a
Yeah.
list of questions I haven't even asked yet, but we got some meat and potatoes and it's been a great meal. So for those of you listening, if you're ready to stop relying on talent alone and start forming that character that we've been hearing about, and the character really that is required for lasting impact, not just on our own home, but the homes of those that we lead, I highly recommend picking up a copy of The Heart of Moses. Whether you're leading a family, a business, or a small group, honestly, as you've heard today, the lessons are timeless indeed. So please share this episode with your book club, with your Bible study, and your friends. Take these lessons into your day, lead with your heart and your spirit connected to the Father. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, when we seize our day, we seize our futures. Enjoy those sunrises and sunsets and all those beautiful adventures in between. I'm Michael Clausen. Thank you for being here today. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com.